And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We're live. Welcome to Benchley Night, April 27th. April 27th, 2025. Kind of amazing, isn't it? You know, tonight's Benchley Night is, it's my favorite Robert Benchley. Because when I was a little kid, Dad would read this to us once or twice a year. And we would laugh and laugh and laugh, and I had no idea what any of it had anything to do with. But one just laughs. If you're around, you're in the middle of your family. I was the youngest in my family, and you don't know what's going on, but everybody is laughing and laughing, so you laugh too. It was amazing to me when, in the 1980s, when I lived in Northampton, Massachusetts, I would listen to WAMC public radio, and they had the Metropolitan Opera on every Sunday, which Alan Shartok, the guy who kind of ran the station, referred to opera as screaming in a hot room, and I have to sort of agree with him. But if you listen to the Metropolitan Opera, the opera synopses that they give are that was what he was laughing at. That was what the joke was all about. I did not realize it was actually rooted in anything real when I was a little kid. But now I do, and it makes it all the funnier. It is nice that you're all here. I see Terry Hudson is here. She had the tailgaters for some sports ball team that I've never heard of. It's the St. Louis Nightshirts or Hot Winds or something. Martha's here. Martha found us. Very good, Martha. Betty Sue is here. Hi, Betty Sue. Betty Sue's going to come up here in a couple of weeks, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be so nice. We're hoping that Studio Cat Corduroy hangs in long enough to have one last visit with Betty Sue. Studio Cat Corduroy is perfectly happy, good appetite, just rickety, and sleeps all the time. She used to be a mean, barrel-chested cat. Now she's a sweet old woman, and we comb her every day, and we tell her we love her. And she falls asleep with her head pressed against the side of the cat bed. And that's all right, ladies and gentlemen. That's all right. Jim Frisk is here. Jim, it says, good evening, everybody. Maple Fest is over here in St. Albans. Just like clockwork, after rain for 3 days of the festival, the sun came out within minutes of the festival ending. Of course it did. Of course it did, Jim. Hey, Carol Fulkerson. Well, it's so nice you're all here. So without further ado, let us put the horrors of this present administration to the side. In fact, those fuckers deporting little kids with stage 4 cancer without their medications. Fuck those assholes. All right, enough politics. Opera synopses. Opera synopses by Robert Benchley. Some sample outlines of grand opera plots for home study. 1. Die Meister-Genossenschaft. Scene: the forests of Germany. Time: antiquity. Cast: Strudel, god of rain, basso. Schmalz, god of light drizzle, tenor. Immerglück, goddess of the 6 primary colors, soprano. Ludwig das Eiweiß, the knight of the iron duck, baritone. The woodpecker, soprano. Argument: the basis of Die Meister-Genossenschaft is an old legend of Germany which tells how the whale got its stomach. Act, for some reason, if I look at the screen, I start laughing. Act 1, the Rhine. Act 1, the Rhine at low tide, just below Benchley. Immerglück has grown weary of always sitting on the same rock, with the same fishes swimming by every day, and sends for Schwoll to give her something to do. Schwoll asks her how she would like to have passed before her all the wonders of the world fashioned by the hand of man. She says, rotten. He then suggests that Ringblatz, son of Flucht, be made to appear before her and fight a mortal combat with the iron duck. This pleases Immerglück, and she summons to her the 4 dwarves, hot water, cold water, cool and cloudy. She bids them bring Ringblatz to her. They refuse because Flucht has at one time rescued them from being buried alive by acorns. And in a rage, Immerglück strikes them all dead with a thunderbolt. Act 2, a mountain pass. Repenting of her deed, Immerglück has sought advice of the giants Offen and Besitz, and they tell her that she must procure the magic zither, which confers upon its owner the power to go to sleep while apparently carrying on a conversation. That was my father's favorite line, I think. He laughed and laughed at that. And I sort of got that, even as a little kid. I sort of got that. I'm going to read it again because it's such a good sentence. And they tell her she must procure the magic zither, which confers upon its owner the power to go to sleep while apparently carrying on a conversation. This magic zither has been hidden for 300 centuries in an old bureau drawer guarded by the iron duck, and although many have attempted to rescue it, all have died of a strange ailment, just as success was within their grasp. But Immerglück calls to her side Dampfboot, the tinsmith of the gods, and bids him make for her a Tarnhelm, or invisible cap, which will enable her to talk to people without their understanding a word she says. For $1.50 extra, Dampfboot throws in a magic ring which renders its wearer insensible. Thus armed, Immerglück starts out for Valhalla, humming to herself. Act 3. The forest before the iron duck's bureau drawer. Merglitz, who has up till this time held his peace, now descends from a balloon and demands the release of Betty. It has been the will of Wotan that Merglitz and Betty should meet on Earth and hate each other like poison. But Zweiback, the druggist of the gods, has disobeyed and concocted a love potion, which has rendered the young couple very unpleasant company. Wotan, enraged, destroys them with a protracted heat spell. Encouraged by this sudden turn of events, Immerglück comes to Earth on a boat drawn by 4 white Holsteins, and, seated alone on a rock, remembers aloud to herself the days when she was a girl. Pilgrims from Augenblick, on their way to worship at the shrine of Schmür, hear the sound of reminiscence coming from the rock, and they stop in their march to sing a hymn of praise for the drying up of the crops. They do not recognize Immerglück, as she has her hair done differently, and think that she is a beggar girl selling pencils. In the meantime, Rigel, the paper cutter of the gods, has fashioned himself a sword on the forger's schmalls and has called the weapon Assistance in Emergency. Armed with assistance in emergency, he comes to Earth determined to slay the iron duck and carry off the beautiful Irma. But Frimzel overhears the plan and has a drink brewed, which is given to Rigel in a golden goblet, and which, when drunk, makes him forget his past and causes him to believe that he is Schnorr, the god of fun. While laboring under this spell, Rigel has a funeral pyre built on the summit of a high mountain, and after lighting it, climbs on top of it with a mandolin, which he plays until he is consumed. William, are you here? Is my brother William here? Because William can repeat after me the final line of this opera synopsis. Immerglück never marries. 2. Il Minnestrone, peasant love. Scene, Venice, an Old Point comfort. Time, early 16th century. Cast, Alfonso, Duke of Minnestrone, baritone. Partola, a peasant girl, soprano. Cleanzo, Torino, and Bombo, young noblemen of Venice, tenor, and basso. Ludvico and Astolfo, assassins in the service of Cafeteria Ruscatana. Sorry, I said that wrong. Assassins in the service of Cafeteria Rusticana, basso and Methodist. Townspeople, cabbies, and sparrows. Argument. Il Minnestrone is an allegory of the two sides of man's nature, good and bad, ending at last in an awfully comical mess with everybody dead. Act 1. A public square in Ferrara. During a peasant festival held to celebrate the 6th consecutive day of rain, Rudolfo, hey, Jim Frisk, that's just like your Maple Festival. During a peasant festival held to celebrate the 6th consecutive day of rain, Rudolfo, a young nobleman, sees Liliano, daughter of the village bell ringer, dancing along, throwing artificial roses at herself. He asks of his secretary who the young woman is, and his secretary, in order to confuse Rodolfo and thereby to win the hand of his ward, tells him that it is his, Rudolfo's, own mother, disguised for the festival. Rudolfo is astonished. He orders her arrest. Act 2. Banquet hall in Giorgio's palace. Liliano has not forgotten Bombo, her old nurse, in spite of her troubles, and determines to avenge herself for the many insults she received in her youth by poisoning her, Bombo. She therefore invites the old nurse to a banquet and poisons her. Presently, a knock is heard. It is Ugolfo. He has come to carry away the body of Michelo and to leave an extra quart of pasteurized. Liliano tells him that she no longer loves him, at which he goes away, dragging his feet sulkily. Act 3. Act 3. In front of Emilio's house. Still thinking of the old man's curse, Borsa has an interview with Cleanzo, believing him to be the Duke's wife. He tells him things cannot go on as they are, and Cleanzo stabs him. Just at this moment, Betty comes rushing in from school and falls in a faint. Her worst fears have been realized. She's been insulted by Sigmundo, and presently she dies of old age. In a fury, Ugolfo rushes out to kill Sigmundo, and as he does so, the dying Rosenblatt rises on one elbow and curses his mother. 3. Lucy de Lima. Scene, Wales. Time, 1700 Greenwich. Cast, William Waunt, Lord of Glen Basso. Lady Wagstaff, his daughter, soprano. Bertram, her lover, tenor. Lord Roger, friend of Bertram, soprano. Irma, attendant to Lucy, basso. Friends, retainers, and members of the local lodge of Elks. Argument. Lucy de Lima is founded on the well-known story by Boccaccio of the same name and address. Act 1, Gypsy Camp near Waterbury. The gypsies, led by Edith, go singing through the camp on the way to the fair. Following them comes Despard, the gypsy leader, carrying Ethel, whom he has just kidnapped from her father, who had previously just kidnapped her from her mother. Despard places Ethel on the ground and tells Mona, the old hag, to watch over her. Mona nurses a secret grudge against Despard for having once cut off her leg and decides to change Ethel for Nettie, another kidnapped child. Ethel pleads with Mona to let her stay with Despard, for she has fallen in love with him on the ride over. But Mona is obdurate. Act 2, the fair. A crowd of sightseers and villagers is present. Roger appears looking for Laura. He cannot find her. Laura appears looking for Roger. She cannot find him. The gypsy queen approaches Roger and thrusts into his hand the locket stolen from Lord Brim. Roger looks at it and is frozen with astonishment, for it contains the portrait of his mother when she was in high school. He then realizes that Laura must be his sister, and he starts out to find her. Act 3, Hall in the Castle. Lucy is seen surrounded by every luxury, but her heart is sad. She has just been shown a forged letter from Stuart saying that he no longer loves her, and she remembers her old free life in the mountains and longs for another romp with Ravensbane and Wolfshead, her old pair of rompers. The guests begin to assemble for the wedding, each bringing a roast ox. They chide Lucy for not having her dress changed. Just at this moment, the gypsy band bursts in, and Cleon tells the wedding party that Elsie, and not Edith, is the child who was stolen from the summer house, showing the blood-stained derby as proof. At this, Lord Brim repents and gives his blessing on the pair, while the fishermen and their wives celebrate in the courtyard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all right, that is the best. That is the best opera synopses by Robert Benchley. Keep fighting the power, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be a couple of weeks till we have another Benchley night. I got to go teach in South Carolina, home to that cretin Lindsey Graham. But we will keep on keeping on. Hang in there. Resist. Bye-bye.